Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. Today we have with us two very important and amazing people. Let's Talk, as you know, is focused on the issues that we face every day during this pandemic, and I have my co-host Oreo with me, who's saying hello to everyone. So today is a very important topic that we are going to discuss here on Let's Talk. And today we'll be talking about a very neglected subject with two very interesting and amazing people. And they're two very important figures of subcontinent and who have learned from their life and have tried to teach us the similar through the medium of art. We have with us Shaheen Bhatt, and who's going to join us in a moment. And she rose through the ranks of amazing writers in a very short span of time and has written a very important and interesting book on mental health, which is called I've Never Been Unhappier. And with her, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Mahesh Bhatt, the legendary filmmaker, who have crafted amazing classic cinema and have taught so much to us during these turbulent times. So I'm going to now invite them. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. How are you, sir?
Salam,
How are you,
salam.
my Salam, salam alaikum. How are you, Shaheen?
Good, doing well. I hope you're well as well.
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Salam from Pakistan, and hope everyone is okay in Mumbai.
Well, as okay can be in these times.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's a very turbulent time, and that's why we are very fortunate and we are thankful to you to join us to have a conversation on this very important subject.
Such a
So,
privilege
how was
to,
your?
such a privilege to be with you at a moment like this, and we, thanks to these times, I would say that we have realized how much we need each other, and it's in trying moments like this that human beings understand the value of the word solidarity. One thing is very clear that the human race needs to get this straight that if we don't hold our hands together firmly and see that we belong to one of its kind, the species called the human race, we will not find it easy to negotiate this challenge that has come our way.
Yes, absolutely, sir. And actually, just like we were discussing the other day, this pandemic has actually shown us the vulnerability that we have, that despite of any power we hold, the amount of money we hold, at the end of the day, it's each other that we have that we can support each other in through these times. And only that can make sure that we survive any calamity like this.
Yes.
So I will start um, asking some very important questions from Shaheen. So Shaheen, if you can so this is a new world out there with quarantine and lockdown. How are you faring up? Like, what do you do throughout the day? Like, how does your day differ from the old times that we were used to of?
I mean, to be very honest, I don't think my day to day differs that much because I spend most of my time at home anyway. But I think that the massive change is our sense of security and our sense of safety that, I feel like everyone world over has kind of lost at the same time because our cities, our homes, our world, outside world doesn't feel safe right now, which is a really strange position to be in. It's a strange position to be breathing in air and not feeling safe when you're breathing. And so I think that's what's changed for me. It's what's changed for everybody. Going out, that freedom of going out and not having to worry about it has been taken away. So to be very honest, I think most of us, I mean, at home here, we're in a very, very privileged position, which most people are not in that position. So, I think it's just sort of important to acknowledge the fact that this is hard for us. Staying indoors, we're not used to it, but I think we have it very, very easy, and it's important to acknowledge that.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. It's a very different world for a lot of people out there. in India, Pakistan, and even the most rich and powerful countries are being shown this side of vulnerability that they were not accustomed to. We are seeing a highest death rate in United States. We are seeing the highest death rates in Europe. And usually these countries are the ones which are known as safe havens because of their superior medical facility. But this pandemic has shown that everyone is as vulnerable as any other human being on this planet. So that's a very good point that you raised. I wanted to now come to your book, the very important book. First of all, congratulations on that. That was a very good book and very much needed book that you wrote. You talk about adolescence life. So I wanted to know how important it is to initiate conversation about the feelings with your adolescent children. So when you're growing up, like how important was it for you, and what advice would you have for parents who have children who want to talk about stuff like that, like and they cannot find the medium to do so?
Look, I think talking about setting a sort of a safe environment for your children, no matter what age they are, adolescent, 8, 9, 40, 50, whatever age your kids are, I think it's very important to sort of set the kind of environment where you feel like you can talk to your parents, where your kids feel like they can talk to you. I was very fortunate to have parents that gave me absolutely no cause to fear talking to them. But despite that, it was hard for me. So, had I been in a situation where my parents were not, didn't make it easy, it would have been even considerably much harder to have that conversation. For me, I had my father who was also gone through his own sort of mental health trials and tribulations without realizing it. He went through it his whole life without really realizing it. And so with him, I had, there was a sort of a kindred spirit that I had where I felt like I could talk to him about anything. Even when I was 5, he made me feel like I was an adult. He never made me feel like, I was a child, and he treated me like an adult. So he made it very easy to talk to him. I had my mother also, who was very, very invested in my life. She was the one who, in fact, took me to therapy. She's the one who pushed me to go to therapy. So I think it's extremely important to sort of set a tone with your kids where they feel like they can talk to you about anything without judgment, without fear of retribution, without fear of, you know, being rebuked or told that they're exaggerating or, their feelings are not valid. Not once did I speak to my parents about anything where they made light of what I was talking about. They always acknowledged it. So I think it's extremely important, especially because adolescence and, as a child, there's a lot of data that shows that most people that suffer from depression or live with depression have symptoms as early as 8 years old, usually before the age of 10. So that is where it starts. So, and that's also where your education, your emotional education also really starts to take hold at that time. So whatever lessons you're giving your kids at that time are the ones that are going to stick with them. So thankfully, I had this guy who made it extremely easy to talk to. If you have anything to add.
Well, I think one of the most important points that I need to make using Shaheen as a glorious example, not because she is flesh of my flesh, the blood of my blood, but because I think she is a kindred spirit. She has converted her suffering into a document, and that document has inspired millions of people. And I'm quite staggered by the phenomenal response of the kind that she received. We are entertainers and we get a lot of adulation and we get a lot of claps and people rave about our imaginary products. But there's a different kind of intimacy that the people feel towards with Shaheen. And that comes from the vulnerability that she has been able to reveal. I think real courage is to be able to reveal how vulnerable we are. And I think that's what makes her exceptional for me, that she has used her suffering and converted it into something which has become a kind of a tool for other people to cope with what they are battling with. And the stigma of which has been erased to a certain extent, at least in the pockets where she lives. Because, I don't want to talk about it, is the famous phrase that you hear when people are confronted with the possibility of having what is called a mood disorder, a quote unquote mental disorder, which is biological and a biochemical disorder. And I think to be able to say things as they are is a sign of is a sign that the young people in all over the world are now seeing things, looking things in the eye. And I know what I love about this generation, the young, is they have uh, they have developed a thirst for the authentic. You know, there's so much of bullshitting going on all over the world. You know, manufactured um, uh, content which is being dished out, and wordsmiths fashion discourses for great leaders. And you know when that person makes that speech, it's just uh, manuscript eloquence. But when somebody speaks from his life or her life, there's something called the experiential truth, which comes from her body, from her being, from those dark nights where she has struggled all alone. And that gives the book a kind of resonance which connects with everybody, no matter which part of the world you are. Because as we are suffering right now, at this in this moment of this pandemic, you connect with anybody in any part of the world, and you'll find how pathetically similar we are. And isn't it tragic that we feel that just because we have different flags and we wear different kind of clothes in our regions, we feel that we are unique and different or superior to the other. We are pathetically similar. Those differences are very superficial. And I think Shaheen's book has revealed to me one ageless truth, that the heritage of man is the sorrow. And that sorrow becomes your fuel to create works of art, great works of fiction, great music. Great political movements, religious movements have come from the womb of sorrow. And I think that is what we will wake up to. This is a moment of collective awakening, I think, for the world. I do not want to minimize the problems of those unfortunate billions who are perhaps not privileged to have a conversation on an Insta platform. There are people whom we can't reach. But there are millions that we can reach. And I think we are talking and underscoring one point, that we are human beings, we suffer, we bleed exactly the same way, with slight differences. And a little help from someone can take us a long, long way from that, from those shackles that we are, we are locked up in.
Sure. Just to build from this point, Shaheen, I'm really interested in finding out something from you. That, in my opinion, sometimes we build personalities that show a very powerful and stronger image to the outside world because we have to maintain a certain persona. Coming from a family which is obviously always in limelight, I'm sure that was also the case with you sometimes. That you have to maintain a certain persona that you show when you're going outside, when you're talking to friends, when you're meeting people. But that persona sometimes prohibits people who are trying to help us because they see us as strong individuals. So how do you create that opportunity, and how do you identify that when you can open that crack in which you let someone like your father or someone you trust inside so they can make the approach to you that yes, they are there to help you?
I think one of the hallmarks of depression or any mental illness really is the fact that you get very adept at putting on a mask. You get very adept at hiding all your internal turmoil, whatever it is. You plaster a smile on your face. You get used to saying "I'm okay" every time somebody asks you a question. Um, it's one of the key facets, in my opinion, of what depression is. It's this constant feeling of shame and hiding how you're feeling. I think for me, what happened was it got to a point where I reached a sort of an internal rock bottom, which is when I realized I had no choice but to ask for help. So for me, it wasn't that I, got to a place where I identified, okay, this is a good time for me to now go and do this, or I'm feeling okay. It hit a very bad point for me before I felt like I was able to actually ask for help. But not even able, I needed to. I had no choice. I felt like I had no choice at that point. And I do think it is like that for most people. I think most people get to a point where they feel like they're left with no other opportunity. It's over the last few years that I've learned better. I've learned a little more how to I don't think it's easy to ask for help. I think it's a very hard thing to do, because asking for help means that you have to first admit that there is something that needs help in the first place, which is something that you try very hard to avoid acknowledging. So I think over time, what I've managed to do is, at the very least, is that if somebody asks me a question, I try to answer it truthfully rather than putting myself in the position of having to go and seek help. I know that the people around me care enough, so when they do ask me a question, I try my best to answer it truthfully. I try my best to. So, I mean, my sister just asked me just yesterday, "Are you feeling okay?" And I said, yes, I'm feeling fine. She's been checking up on me quite regularly because she's worried that in this particular time there is a chance that I might be starting to feel bad. So she asks me regularly, and when I do feel that I'm not feeling very good, I say I'm not having a very good day, but I'm okay. So I think it's just a matter of getting to a point where you feel, if somebody asks you a question, start there, being able to just vocalize quite basically how you're feeling.
Right.
So that's a good starting point.
All right. And just to build up on that, so when family or friends try to see and try to help because they see that obviously there is something happening, but sometimes they don't understand themselves what depression is, what issues, how they can help. So sometimes they end up saying the wrong things, to you, which actually end up aggravating rather than resolving the problem. So what advice would you have for families and friends who have people who need help, that how to approach someone when they're visibly edgy, how to approach them when they are down but they're not edgy? So I mean, like, what is the best way to leave them alone or to be with them even when they say, yeah, just leave us alone? So what is the best way to move forward in that?
So there are two things that I always say. One, I think you need to start with trusting your instincts, because you don't, you know your family member the best. You know people that live with you and people that you love. You know them well. So I think trust your instincts, because I don't think we trust our instincts enough when it comes to this. Um, so first and foremost, trust where your instincts are leading you. Secondly, I think always stray away from giving people advice. I don't think it helps. Unless somebody actually asks you, what should I do not tell them what to do. Do not tell them, cheer up, buck up, it's going to be fine. Because if somebody wanted it, they would ask for it. And 90% of the time, what I have realized is, when you're telling somebody how you're feeling, when you're telling somebody that I'm not feeling good, 90% of the time, all you want is for somebody to look at you and say, I understand, that must be really hard, and I'm so sorry that you're going through that. You want someone to acknowledge your pain. You want somebody to see your pain. You want somebody to acknowledge the fact that you're going through a hard time. You don't really want a whole bunch of hey, do yoga. I know that. Like, these are all things I know. I've done enough reading. I've been through this. I know that. So just acknowledge people's pain. And I think it's a learning. You're never going to know exactly how much to push, when to back off. It takes trial and error. Even as people who are going through something, just accept, it's important to accept and understand the fact that the people who are, even if they're saying the wrong things, their intentions are good. They're trying to help you. They're afraid. They don't know how to deal with things either. They're doing the best that they can. So it requires, and a depressive person is not very open to help. They're not people who are, immediately open to being helped or any of that. So it's hard for both parties. So trust your instincts and just start there, and
Correct.
it's trial and error. You have to see how it goes.
Correct. One of the things that I myself also, learned later in my life rather than earlier, that we as human beings, we're not accustomed to looking at something as something is wrong if we don't see it physically there. If you see a wound, if you see someone sick with a fever, you have this empathy for them. But if something as serious as mental health is not visible in a form of like a physical deformity, then it's very hard for you to understand that. So is there anything that you noticed, that something that anyone said, maybe your father or your mother, when they used to see you, that usually gave you a voice of comfort, even when they were not trying to like give you advice, but they just felt that there is something wrong? So what was the key word, any trigger words that you can recall that our audience can learn, and then they can talk to their kids or friends in a certain way?
Well, my father, I mean, to start with, every time I told him, Papa, I'm not, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling bad. I feel like I don't want to be here. I don't know what to do. Not once did he give me advice. He always said, he looked at me and said, I know, baby, I'm sorry. I understand. I've been there. That's literally all that's all he said. I've been there. I understand. I'm
Mm,
understanding how you're feeling. And just that in itself just gave me so much immense comfort that somebody A was capable of understanding that I was going through a hard time, and they were not saying, "Oh God, you're oh no, I'm so what should we do?" There was no panic. There was just literally him sitting there and going, "I'm
mm,
sorry that I understand. I'm sorry that that's happening to you." And he
mm,
always
mm,
told me every time I said, "Papa, why am I not happy?" He said, "Why do you want to be happy? What is it?
mm,
Why who told you have to be happy? It's okay. I'm not happy today. You'll be happy
mm,
tomorrow. Maybe it's
mm,
fine. Eventually you'll be happy." So
mm, mm.
I think that it was just that taking away that pressure. I felt this constant pressure of having to be feeling like I had to be arrive at some place of happiness or arrive at some place of being a certain way, and that pressure got
Mm,
taken away because I never felt like I had to
mhm.
be anything other than what I was being.
Correct.
Which gave me the space to actually then start internally working on myself because I didn't have that external pressure. So that
Correct.
that was for me that was huge.
All
I
right.
think,
And
I think, I think the most important thing for a parent is to understand that you cannot force your children to fit into that brutal system which is fiercely competitive. A person who is suffering from what is called depression or some kind of a mood disorder is dealing with a kind of a weight, an albatross, and you cannot even begin to wake up to that. So, there's an enormous feeling of guilt in parents that, oh my God, we have failed somewhere. Our child is not being able to fit in and perform and become the number one in a particular field that we fantasize about. I think the most important thing is to take away from them the burden of fitting in that brutal world that we have created, which is unforgiving, which hates failures and worships success, and turns your back
mm,
to you when you do not deliver. I think,
mm,
you must understand it's okay for
mm,
the child at home not being able to fit into that system because you need to
mm,
question the system, not the child. And then give your entire attention and your love. And love has the miraculous power of giving comfort to your child. I think this is what mankind is going to wake up even more in these times with all your weapons of mass destruction that the whole world has amassed. The fact is,
mm,
all the leaders of mankind are so powerless today in front of the virus. And what it is
mm,
seeing you through is
mm,
your love for the other. When you stay
mm,
at home, you are told that by not going out, you're not only not saving yourself, but you're also saving the other. Our staying back home is an act of love. So I think
mm,
ultimately that word called love is something that we will wake up to. Empathy is something we will wake up to. And I think at home, when your child or any of your family members suffers from this kind of a mood disorder, understand that it's a biochemical disorder which needs
mm,
to be approached in a very, very patient way. And there are various routes to it. At times, only psychotherapy doesn't work. You need
mm,
medical support, ingesting tablets which are prescribed by a practitioner, which have to be done over a period of time. So I think it's a long road, and uh, you need to understand that the burden of that, there's nothing like normal. This word
mm,
normal, you've created a model of normal entity, and that's why you land
mm,
up performing. Everybody performs to be what they are
mm,
not, and such a relief
mm,
to throw that
mm,
weight of your,
mm,
of your head
Can I
and just
interject?
breathe.
mm,
Yes.
mm,
So, basically, the world is a very harsh place. We all know that the world is a harsh place, like he's saying, it's a brutal system. And a lot of parents, I think, do this thing where, tough love.
mm,
I have to be harsh with my child because I have to prepare them from the outside world. The outside world is brutal, therefore I have to protect my child. To protect my child by being also equally brutal and preparing them for that world. But it's because the outside world is brutal that I think it's of utmost importance that you actually show your child what it's like, what love looks like, to come home to a, a loving and supportive environment. I don't think tough love works. I don't think tough
mm,
love is the right thing to do, especially when somebody is dealing with depression.
mm,
Acceptance, and exactly what he's saying, you have to show them that you're on their side no matter what, because the world is a
mm,
brutal place. Just because of that, you have to show them that you're completely unconditionally on their side.
mm,
So
mm, mm,
that's, yeah,
mm.
sorry. I didn't-
Yeah, the support system is very important, which shows the children and your friends that the support system and the love is there. So you cannot basically abandon them at any cost. You have to show them the support and the unconditional love that you hold for them. And that brings me to my next point that you have mentioned in your previous interviews, that some things you had to do late in your life rather than early because of this pressure. And so, how important do you think that as a society, why are we so fixated with age and success and timing things that are out of our control?
I mean, I don't know why we're so. My father told me this when I was like 10. He said, "China, the world treats successful people differently than it treats unsuccessful people. That's just a fact." He's like, Don't ask me
Mm,
why the world is like that. That's just the way it is."
mm,
And again, I don't really know why that's the case. I guess there's just a reverence for some idea of perfection that we all have,
It does not exist.
which doesn't exist. Yeah, but there's some
mm,
sort of reverence that
mm,
we have for this idea of perfection, which
mm,
is completely impossible to ever attain. Which is why we constantly are failing, because we're trying to reach something that is not real. So you can run and run, but you're never going to get there because it's not there.
mm, mm, mm,
So yeah, I mean, for me, it just meant that I had to understand that my reality was a little different from the reality of my family, for the simple reason that I didn't have the same drive. And
mm,
again, that's something I used to tell my dad. I was like, I don't feel like I don't have drive. I don't want to do anything. I'm not motivated. I am not ambitious. And he
mm,
said, okay, but you
mm,
also doesn't mean you can create a false sense of urgency. If it's not there, it's not there. It will either come or it won't come. You have to take that and work around that. So what I learned was I had to work around that and find ways of. So for me, writing actually was perfect because I could work from home. I sat at home. I could sit in my room and do it. I didn't have to interact with people. I did it at my own pace. So for
mm,
me, it was about things came delayed, a little delayed. I'm a late bloomer, but
mm,
I feel like I've eventually gotten to a place where I have started just now. After 20 years of dealing with this, I've just now started to flourish a little bit. I've started to move out of those uh, restrictions that were placed on me by this illness. And it's taken me
mm,
a while to get there, and I've gotten there again because the lack of pressure in my life. My family didn't push me to do it.
mm,
They've given me that room.
mm,
Um,
mm.
so yeah.
So, but
She
there's
made,
not, but so basically there's
she made
nothing
her,
like,
she
sorry,
made
go
her,
ahead, sir.
I think she made her wounds sing. So
Mm,
that's her song.
mm,
When you use your wounds and you make them
correct,
sing, then
correct.
that melody reaches millions of hearts, and this help those millions there to go through many a dark nights. I think I'm very proud of my child. That she used her
Yes.
wounds and converted into something, a kind of a song which is helping people. And it's
Correct.
not a tool to say, "Oh, I'm so special." She says, "No, I suffer. I'm vulnerable. You can hurt me. You can wound me.
Mm,
I'm fragile." I think that's
mm,
courage to say that I need your help, and I cry.
mm,
I'm frail, and I don't know.
mm,
I'm done with pretending that I have all the answers. Like I can say I
mm,
don't know. I'm okay with not
mm,
knowing, and
mm,
what I have learned is immense. But what I don't know oof, is
mm.
phenomenal. I can't. So I think she's okay with that now.
Mm. So there is nothing, no things as things such as late blooming then, right? Because you learn when you learn. Like the limits that we put on ourselves, that we tell our kids that okay, you have to go to college for 4 years and then you have to land a specific job, or you have to reach a certain place at certain age. I think if we remove those restrictions, we let the kids and even the young people, like if we let them flourish on their own pace, I think the result will be much more beautiful than what we have right now, following a system which is not fit for anyone. Because you cannot expect everyone to be in a same system and have the same results. Everyone is different. There's nothing, just like Mahesh Saab said, what is normal? Like, there's nothing normal. For me, like my child is cerebral palsy. For his normal, I'm abnormal. For my normal, that is abnormal. So I don't think the definition of normal should be there anymore. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think it's a defunct word. I don't think it's a word that works in our system. It takes all sorts to make make a human race function and work. And again, you know, exactly what you're saying. There is no such thing as a late bloomer, because for the simple reason that what is the finish line that you're trying? What does it matter whether you do something when you're 30, 40, or 70? What is the finish line? There's no finish line. You know, there is nowhere to reach. I think
Correct.
people, parents encourage their kids to do certain things because they obviously want them to have comfortable life. They want them to be comfortable. They want them to be in a position where they're okay, and that's a very understandable thing. But then I also think very often parents will do this thing where they want the kind of lives for their kids that they want, without really realizing that their children are built differently. They might not want the same things as their parents. So I think it's
Correct.
people like you said, people are different. Everyone's different.
Yeah, exactly. So we know you have a pet. Where is your cat? Can we see it?
I can. I have no
Well,
idea.
they've been asked to go away and behave because they have a tendency to
My
walk
co-anchor Oreo has also
into the
disappeared.
way
Oh,
and
he's right
outside.
here.
I
So,
think I think if they have gone.
Unfortunately.
Oh, there.
so this is my co-anchor Oreo. He's
Hi.
with me on every Let's Talk show.
Hi. He's not
Okay,
impressed.
okay.
He doesn't want to converse. He wants to do what he wants to do.
Now I'm gonna turn the questions to you, Mahesh Saab, if you allow me.
Ji, ji.
They have a lot of questions. So, how does it feel? First of all, when we were just discussing right now, as you were said, okay, grief also somehow is very powerful, that it results in something very beautiful when it comes to arts. We have seen, especially if I'm talking about Pakistan, like in 80s when we had martial law, we had some of the most creative art emerge in form of dramas, in form of music. The most beautiful dramas produced in Pakistan, Tanhaiya, Dhoop Kinare, were in 80s. And it was a very, very tiring time. It was a very, very hard time. So how do you resonate to that? Like, how does your personal journey in which you faced depression, in which you faced all of those things that Shaheen has faced, like, how did that encourage you to come up with stories and put them into cinema?
Well, I would say that if you take away what people call my dysfunctional childhood or coming from a home which was not normal by the standards of the world, then I have no narrative of mine. So I would say that the so-called abnormality that people uh, wanted me to conceal and hide and pretend to be like the person next door, the moment I shed that mask, I came into my own. So I was known for my fiercely autobiographical films. Those are the movies that will be mentioned in my obituary as on the top of the list. I feel that we have to wake up and take note of one thing, that maybe you have some kind of a genetic predisposition towards a kind of uh, mood. Like I thought that from childhood I knew that I suffered from melancholia. And I found the writings of great poets and Faisa and I mean people uh, with cinema of a kind like Guru Dutt's movies that we used to see as
You
children.
quote Nilesh Jain quite oftenly.
Yeah, Nilesh is a friend from the advertising world, and he responds to my morning messages, and he gives them his own interpretation. Quite a unique guy. So I feel that all art, as I said, is born out of frustration and suffering and despair. With all the answers that we claim that we are in possession of, the fact is that we are awestruck and bewildered by the mystery and the magic of life. And and a so-called artist or a writer is continuously grappling with his inadequacy. And when he does that, he successfully touches a point which becomes the glue that holds him and the audience together. Because then they say, I think he's like us. I don't think that with all the kind of name, fame that has come my way, the craft that I have mastered with great difficulty, if I have mastered, who's from stumbling and fumbling, has anything special, but my humanity, which is the lifeblood of it, which is the asset of every living human being. And I think that is what you understand, the commonness, that is that you bleed exactly like the person who is that unknown anonymous person. So I think all great artists, if there are great artists, they seek to touch rather than to evoke awe. You know, I would rather be understood than admired. I would not dazzle and mesmerize and intimidate. I want to touch and sit down and say, look, I'm sitting down on the same plane where you are, and you tell me what, how do you deal with your nights of suffering and your how do you handle your uncertainties? Like that's what makes Shaheen's book so unique. That it's not some she's not chest beating and saying, oh my God, I've been afflicted. And what I thank God that she does, at the end of it all, she doesn't say I found any answers. She says, I have this disorder, and I think it's like a shadow I can't shake off. It's going to be there forever with me. And I will have to find ways to live with it. And I think that's what I discovered, that this is what I am. This is my temperament. I was born this way. I think self-acceptance is the first step to becoming what is called an artist of any kind.
That's why I was, I mean, like Daddy or Zakham, I don't think they were possible if there was no self-acceptance and if there was no acknowledgement of, you know, what you have been through and what you think about things. I want to remind you of a comment that Pooja made at the launch of Shaheen's book, that something you taught her when she was feeling down about Humpty Dumpty. I want you to, you know, tell our viewers about that, that what was the comment and how does that fit into this conversation?
I used to recite that nursery, right? Humpty Dumpty.
Sat on the wall.
Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. And I said, I am that kind of a broken Humpty Dumpty, and people have tried to fix me. And I was lucky to meet a man called U.J. Krishnamurti, who was the most subversive thinker I have ever walked on this planet. Said, you don't need to be fixed. You're okay. And I think that's why I shared with my children that you don't need to be fixed. And well, there are claimants out there saying that we'll fix you. And then they'll make a creed out of their recipe that they will market. But the fact is, there are no enduring solutions to the problems of the human heart. And the human animal has a strange appetite to create problems and then sit with that problem and then try to resolve them.
Correct, correct. So Shaheen just recently shared a picture of you, which we can see now, looking like a Greek painter. So do we expect this look to stay?
I'm just imitating you.
Yes.
I was inspired by your look and I was imitating you. You know, unfortunately, they don't use having a hair cutting facility available at home is not a part of the essential service in this part of my city. So I don't have access to somebody who can give me a good shave every day. But
if there was no lockdown, I would have come and done it for you.
But my kids seem to like this. My kids seem to like this.
Yeah, I was telling him you should keep it. You should keep it. This is the time.
Because of the grain, they now take me seriously.
The salt and pepper look is always better. So now a lighter question, like you have directed Pooja before, and then Alia in Sadak 2, which is about to come. How is it to work with family? Like I've seen you, I was fortunate to see you work on the set of Sadak 2, but Pooja was not shooting at that time. So how is it different? Like, are you as strict as you are with the other crew? And like, how is it, like, please explain it to us. Like, how is it any different?
I find working with my daughters a great experience because they are brilliant, they are unique, they're distinct, they have their unique voice. Like the voice you see in Shaheen's book is her voice. Alia has sparkled everybody, astounded us all by a phenomenal writer. And is very heartening and makes very proud is that she did not without holding my little finger. Pooja is an enduring icon as far as I'm concerned. She is one courageous girl who falls down and gets up and falls down and gets up, and she redefines
She
herself.
is very tough on the set. I was looking at her. She was all over everything, and I was like, I'm scared of you if I was working with.
Force of nature.
She's a force
Pooja's
of
a
nature.
force of nature. She's a hurricane.
Yeah, she is.
I couldn't have come into this phase of my life after 20 years, and I can't talk much about Sadak 2 because there is a kind of a contract where I will not talk about it till we are ready to
Correct.
release the film. But I think I couldn't have made it without the support of Pooja, who was my general in the field
Correct.
and created a firewall around me and protected me and gave my movie the kind of a shield of the contemporary
Correct.
times. And Alia. Alia is
Yeah.
a new consciousness, a new kind of a mind, a brilliant actor, and a person who still is in the process of feeling unsure before she gives a shot. And I think that that is what makes her what she is. I think these two girls have contributed. They made my wrinkles shine. They're giving me a new kind of a kind of a sheen to my wrinkles.
Correct. Shaheen, I mean, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that you also screenwrite.
Yeah, I mean, not at the moment, but I started writing with my father. So I
Oh,
started writing.
wonderful.
I used to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning to write articles with him. So that's actually like my grounding in writing has come from him. And then I used to write scripts with him. I used to write scenes with him. He basically like, I don't think, I just think he saw that there was a writer in me somewhere. And I don't think he wanted to sort of, explore that and have me sort of understand that it takes a lot of discipline to write. It's hard work. It's not easy, and I feel like a lot of my writing grounding has come from him.
So it's in the genes. So I think should we expect a movie written by you anytime soon and directed by Bhatt?
I have no, I don't know anytime soon. Maybe never say never. But not anytime soon.
Never say never. That's what we say. And what's up in your just the last two questions before I let you guys go, that you have joked about before, like that you're outnumbered in your home with like Soni ji, Shaheen, and Pooja and Alia. So has that changed throughout, or now is it any different, or is the same, still the same?
I'm in an absolute minority. Even my domestic friends at home, Ina and Rashida and Shiba are my cat. No, there's only two males here. We are a minority here, but we are thankful that the ladies are very generous, but when they get angry, it makes up Shiva. I'm scared of my daughters, and I have no problem.
And tell us, out of all of your classics, which song is your favorite? And now I have to make a request, which you cannot deny. That is a mandatory request that when I was there with you in Mumbai, I was fortunate to hear you sing. So you have to sing my favorite song, Aina, Mujhse Meri Pehli Surat Maangi, a few lines for our audience, because that would be the best. Because if you remember when the first time we met, that's the first conversation we had. That Daddy is still one of my all-time favorite. And by the way, congratulations! I was reading that Pooja donated the royalty of Daddy to some charity. So that was a very, very wonderful gesture. It was very heartwarming to read
Well,
that.
well, Daddy, again was sourced from my own turbulent life, and I was, I am an alcoholic, and nothing, it's nothing like I was an alcoholic. Yes, I have, ever since she was born, I've given up. It's about 30 years. I've not been drinking, not a drop of alcohol.
Excellent.
And Daddy
Excellent.
was born from my fumbling, stumbling, depraved phase of my life. And the only way I could redeem myself was to bring that out in some kind of an artistic form. And being a filmmaker, that's the only thing that I could do. So but I was fortunate that I had people like Anupam Kher, and Pooja made her debut, and I had
Yes.
a great team of people who gave their hearts, and we made it for Doordarshan. And it was a very, very bold film produced by Doordarshan. And something which doesn't happen nowadays, even private channels don't have the gall like Doordarshan showed in its
Correct.
days. I think, and the very fact that you mentioned that film was almost 31 years, 31 years later,
Yeah.
speaks volumes about
Correct.
it. According to me,
Oh, yes.
time is the only critic. You know, anything that survives the passage of time must
Yes.
have something which is it is called truthful. Truth doesn't age.
Absolutely.
All the other facts go.
Absolutely.
So the song you said that I na mujhse meri pehli si surat
Pehli si
maange.
surat mein. Yes.
The tune is from a very big, successful song from Pakistan, right? And I remember
Oh,
that
okay.
we, in those days, there was very little communication between the artistic world, and again, we're back
Correct.
to point zero now. But
Correct.
I remember that tune is to be back. It's something that was, my mother used to love that tune. So the song
Okay.
was, आए ना मुझसे मेरी पहली सी सूरत मांगे मेरे अपने मेरे होने की निशानी मांगे आई ना मुझसे मेरी पहली सी सूरत मांगे.
Very nice, sir. Thank you so much. That was lovely. I remember this song because at back in those days we used to have those antennas that we used to move towards Amritsar to to watch this Indian movies
Ah,
sometimes when they used to play on DD,
oh,
Doordarshan. तो
oh, how
तब
lovely.
देखा
How
exactly.
lovely. The gesture that you made told me so much about the time that we, that's बात वही करना थोड़ा सा
हाँ
होता
थोड़ा
है
सा इधर घुमा देना
there's
कि
a
अब आ
great
रहा है
share of
ऊपर से
there's a
आवाजें लगा रहे होते थे छत से कि अब आ रहा है अब रुक जाओ
yeah, there's a great share of I think इकबाल साहब कि फासला शिद्दत एहसास से कम होता है फासला शिद्दत एहसास से कम होता
एहसास
है
से कम
एक
होता है
जरा हाथ बढ़ा दे तो छू लूं तुझको
क्या बात है वाह
जरा सा हाथ बढ़ाने की होती है राइट
बिल्कुल
थैंक यू
और ये गाना जो ये मुझे इसलिए भी ज्यादा याद है when I joined government college I by the way I joined government college just because Faiz Ahmed Faiz went there so he's my all-time favorite poet तो वहां पे I joined the music society and this was the first song I sung there I used to
वाह
learn tabla so I this is the first song I sung because it's my all-time favorite
थैंक यू
so thank you so much guys it was very very nice talking you thank you for
Thank
your
you, thank
time
you.
and
Thank you to all those beautiful people who tuned in to watch us. We love you all.
yes
Thank you very
yes
much. And we
yes
need to understand the importance of solidarity. Either we
yes
all make it through this fire or none
yes
of us does. We will have no other choice but to wake up to that collective asset of humanity, which is love and empathy.
absolutely
Thanks.
and our love to everyone in Mumbai in India and hope everyone stays
Thank you.
safe and
Thank you.
love for all of you from Pakistan thank you so much
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you.
thank
Bye-bye.
you thank
Thank
you
you. Bye-bye.
thank you
Bye-bye.
thank you bye bye thank you very much guys for tuning in it was a very nice episode of Let's Talk We are very fortunate to have Mahesh Bhatt Saab and Shaheen with us. And it was a fantastic show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tomorrow, we have another great show with a very nice and very amazing personality and a superstar journalist of Pakistan, Maria Maiman. So don't forget to tune in tomorrow 9:30 for another amazing session of Let's Talk. And stay safe. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your eyes. Don't touch your ears. Don't touch your nose. And make sure you wash your hands 20 seconds. And let's stay positive. Let's stay together so we can fight and beat coronavirus, and we can resume our everyday activities like we used to. It was great talking to you, and see you tomorrow.